Try to understand the universe. Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
All right, Kieran, thanks for joining me on the Unblocked Creators. It's good to be with you.
Hey man, yeah, thank you for having me on. Really looking forward to talking.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it for a bit. I'll let you tell a little bit of the exciting story of why our podcast was delayed a little bit, and other fun stories. You are a great storyteller, and I've been very entertained by your writings, but also very inspired by the personal nature of your story, the things you've overcome and what you've achieved. So I'm excited to try to break it all down and extract some of your secrets about how you've done what you've done.
Sure, I'm not sure there's many secrets, but yeah, hopefully there's some useful tips for you.
Well, I said in the intro a brief synopsis about where you came from and what you've accomplished, but let me rewind before dentistry. Let's go back to earlier Kieran Drew, and can you tell me any of the things that you dreamed of being as a child?
Sure. I think my first. It depends how far back you want to go. My first kind of job that I remember really wanting was to be a pilot, which was kind of around the age of 13, 14, 15, 16. I grew up in a military boarding school, so I was kind of just living the script that I was most expected to. And from that regard, thankfully, in a weird way, I had quite a serious medical diagnosis, and so I couldn't go down that path anymore. And that just sort of led to drilling teeth instead. A bit of an arc.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when you became a dentist, is that something that once you became interested, you just went for it, or was it something you'd never really thought of doing beforehand?
Well, do you know what, man? So I come from not like dead poor family, but we don't have much money, and it's in the northeast of England, a little village, and quite soon after the RAF, so that's the like the army for pilots in England, they said I couldn't carry on with my process. I didn't really know what to do. And I was with my dad one day. We went up to the village square to get a cup of tea, and we're sitting there at 9 in the morning, and there's this huge queue of people outside a dental practice. My dad just looks at me and he's like, you know what, son, I've never seen a poor dentist before. And from that moment, it was just sort of blinders on, like I was good at science, good at maths, and so it just began to click. No one had ever been to university in my family, so there was like this pride element to it. And as soon as you tell someone at school, like teachers, that you want to be a dentist, it's almost celebrated, because if they produce dentists, doctors, or lawyers, it reflects well on them. And so I'm not sure how much consideration, and looking back, I gave that. I did a week of work experience, and I actually remember the dentist telling me, don't do this. But I was sort of blinded by what it unlocks and stuff. So from there, it was just 16 onwards. I didn't really consider anything else. This was it.
Right. Wow. And from what I've read, you weren't particularly happy for most of the time, or at some point, you weren't so happy in that career, despite that the money was rolling in and the status was there, right? It's something that's respected by society, and yet it was somehow unsatisfying to you.
Yeah. I mean, at university, it didn't really matter, because like we had different objectives. That was about partying. But even then, I was like, when I actually came to the lessons, I was like, oh God, I don't want to be here. It's not that fun. It's not that interesting. But I just thought that was normal learning, right? I didn't know now that like you should really be doing the stuff that lights you up, that you want to learn about on like a Wednesday night. And then when I graduated, I'd always had like a dream of being someone. I've got my fingers up to say that, a big guy. Do something impressive with my life, show that I can work hard. And I hadn't really considered what that meant. And I was in the belief that the more money you made, the happier you were. And so I immediately after graduating took on two jobs as a dentist, and I worked really hard on it. I took a diploma in aesthetic dentistry, and I was just going in further and further in, and on paper I was killing it. I was 26 years old. We had a brilliant apartment in the city centre. I probably one of the highest earners for my age in the north of the country, and yeah, I was fucking miserable. um, like I liked days when I got paid, but for the most part, I was finishing every day absolutely exhausted. I was anxious. I was stressed. Dentistry has one of the highest suicide rates, and the reason being that it's very physically demanding, but also emotionally demanding. But I couldn't kind of work out what was wrong with me, or I thought there was something wrong with me because I was like, you have everything that should be celebrated, and yet you are getting more and more unhappy. The problem was I didn't know what to do about that, so I took that as like, oh, you don't have enough yet, and began to specialize further and go. I was going to start a new job at an even better clinic and all of these things. And it's a terrible time for a lot of people, but COVID was like a slamming on the brakes because there was time to think, and that was very uncomfortable for me.
Oh, so you had to finally sit with all that unhappiness and sort it out.
Pretty much, yeah.
So then at some point, I don't know if it was long before you quit dentistry that you started writing, but you decided to quit, and that was a big moment, right? Like a lot of pressure, probably internally and externally, I would imagine, to stay with this career you had built that you'd worked hard for, and you decided to walk away from it, not exactly knowing for sure what the result of that would be.
Yeah.
So how did that feel?
Terrifying. Yeah, terrifying. I'd been writing for 13 months, but until like I think it was 2 weeks before I quit, I didn't even have 1,000 followers, and I hadn't made any money either. And what had happened was I was about to start a new job at a new clinic, and one day my boss called me and he was like, "Look, the clinic isn't ready. I'm going to give you a month's wage. Go have fun, and I'll see you in a month." And when he hung up, I was so goddamn happy. I was running up and down my flat celebrating. And when I stopped to think about it, I was like, wait a second, you're happy because you get a month to write, not to go on holiday. And I was like, oh, this is an opportunity for you to actually not commit to another person for a year and maybe bet on yourself instead. And for me, man, that was a very new experience because I'd always been someone that was... and still am scared of big decisions and always seeking permission from other people. And I remember when I thought, oh my God, am I actually going to do this? I spent 8 hours calling my friends, my mum, my dad, walking around the same loop of the park being like, should I do this? And, there was a resounding yes, which was nice. But then the next day, I had to go, my boss had called me in to show me around the clinic. And actually I was going in to tell him that I ain't going to be your star dentist here. And I remember I walked up to the door. I went to knock and I couldn't actually knock on the door. I was so scared that I ran into the alleyway next door. I was basically having a panic attack. Like my heart was just like a beating drum. And I was just like, this is so ironic that I'm having a panic attack at the dentist. And usually it's my patients. And and I managed to calm down a bit. I was like, you've got to like face this head on. So I knocked on the door before I could think about it. And the door swung open and he's just looking at me with this big beaming smile, and there's like 3 nurses behind him to welcome me in, and I went to speak and I was like, oh, I can't do this. So I spent 20 minutes talking to nurses that I'd never work with, discussing materials I'd never use, and like looking at patients that I'd never see. And then eventually we went upstairs, he sat down and he was like, he just started talking again, and I just like blurted out, I was like, I can't take this job. And his face just dropped, and he was understandably shocked. And a lot of the chat, he was like, "But look, you're only 5 years into your career. Like you're throwing away a good thing." And I was like, "That's the point. Like I'm only 5 years in. If not now, then when?" And the funny thing is when you explain to someone that you're quitting to be a writer, like this look of sympathy in their eyes because to be a writer you're either a best-selling author or you're living in your mum's basement, and I was very much in that second group, and but yeah, it was, I knew it was a great feeling, a great decision, because the immediate relief I felt, and it was the first time I bet on myself, and that's become one of the most addictive things I could do. And stepping outside of that clinic, I remember like the sun shining on the cobbled streets, and this lady walks past me and she smiles. And it was the first time I looked at teeth and thought, "That's not my job." And yeah, it was beautiful ever since. Well, actually, it was bloody horrible for a long while after, but it was nice to be in charge of where I was going with my life.
Yeah, a taste of a type of freedom, of just being in control.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, it's just amazing. It's a big step of courage to walk away from that. Um, so I'd like to ask you a little bit about what gave you the sense that maybe you could be a writer, because you had been writing for a bit without big results per se. And did you write early in life, or was this a new practice?
Well, I'll take the second question first. I So I didn't actually want to be a writer at first. That wasn't the plan. I just had like a gaping heart in my hole for something creative, and I had asked myself what would be the coolest job in the world if money wasn't real, and I landed on stand-up comedy, and what a brilliant thing to make people laugh. And it turns out I wasn't that funny, but the mornings where I was writing jokes, it was incredible for me. Like I just couldn't wait to wake up and sit down and like just wrestle with what's on your mind and all of these things. And I practiced like stand up. It was during COVID for like 3 months, and the more I did it, and I was like, oh, actually, I'm not that excited by stand up. I'm excited by writing. And so from there, I began to ask, like, how do people actually build a writing career? With so within that, when you ask like, did I have much writing experience? I remember calling my mum after maybe 9 months because I was too scared to tell anyone I was doing this, and I called her and I was like, "Mum, I want to quit dentistry." And obviously her reaction was like, "I'm having a middle life crisis." And I told her I wanted to be a writer, and she burst out laughing, and I was like, "What's so funny?" And she was like, "Oh, when you were a kid, all you used to do was run up to your room after school and write stories to yourself." And I had just completely forgotten that. And then with my friends, they were like, "Dude, all you did at university was like write these essays," and I would write all my friends' essays too, and they beat me. Which, and so that, I think the signals were always there, but I never considered that it could be a career. I never really thought that I was allowed to kind of go after what I wanted, um, and yeah, I didn't know that you could actually do something with writing until I like stumbled into the online world.
Yeah, it seems like a very out of reach career path to be a successful author. Um, so it's something that now more and more people are finding out what you can do online. So it's kind of a different era for writers than when you just had to get a book published, right? Now you have so much more independent. You kind of built your own audience and built your own distribution. So I'd like to ask you a bit about that journey, that sort of interim period between when you quit dentistry and you hadn't got results yet. And what was that period of time like? Because I imagine when it got difficult, it might have been hard to summon the motivation to keep going.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like it started super exciting. Like the first day of freedom is extremely sweet. And then it gets very scary when you realize that it is basically all on you. I went in with this sort of naivety. I was like, look, if there's a bunch of 18-year-olds flexing Ferraris on Twitter, all I want to do is cover my costs, so I can sit at home, drink tea, and write and read all day. And making money online is made to sound super easy, but I just found it to be anything but, man. Like I didn't expect the crippling imposter syndrome. was the main one where, as a dentist, I was, happy to charge five figures in cosmetics. And yet, as a writer, I didn't believe anyone would pay me $50. So that was really tough. And I was sort of trying things and they just weren't working. I thought I was going to write for people. I couldn't find clients. And I must have bought 20, 30 courses just looking for someone to tell me how to find clients, which, in hindsight, considering that I help people with this now, I'm like, you need to speak to people and you need to help people. But at the time, I was just looking for the secret sauce. And um, as time went on, so I think it was about 5, 6 months after I quit, uh, I was just running out of money. So I had some savings. That was my idea, was that I would reinvest the money, some of the money I'd made into like a different future. And that money was going. And, I think that's probably the best thing to have happened because fear is a hell of a motivator. And I was like, oh, you actually have to do something now as opposed to this like half-assed sort of attempts that I was making. And so I decided to build a digital product because I was super interested in high leverage stuff. I had been learning copywriting because I'd found like that was one good thing is that when I quit, I had a lot of time to explore my curiosity, and I was falling in love with copywriting. And I was like, well, let's try, create something that's useful for people and try to sell it. And I just announced on Twitter, I was like, in 30 days' time, I will be releasing my first product. And I didn't know what it was. I hadn't built it, but public commitments are a hell of a thing. And then I had a super intense 30 days. And well, what I had done was I was starting to look for just common problems to solve. And I had some audience, but I didn't have a massive audience. So actually, I was just looking at my competitors' audience for comment, and everyone was like, hey, "How can I help you?" And I was just in the comments reading all the answers. And the big one was writer's block. And I was like, "Oh, actually, here's something that I've solved for myself really well because I used to struggle to have one idea a day, and now I've got like 15,000 in my bank. Like it's too many ideas is the problem." And I was like, "Well, how did I solve that?" And I ended up just rebuilding selling what I'd used for myself, which was a really big swipe file, plus like a mechanism attached. And I remember like clicking send on that email, like my first sales email. It was the 31st of March. I can't remember the year now. It'd been 2021 or 2022. And I just remember sitting there like staring at my Gmail, being like, "This is it." And after 5 minutes, I was like, "Oh, this is not it. This is going to like no one is buying." And after about 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, "Oh my God, you look like such an idiot." Like people reading this thing being like, "Who is this Kieran Drew guy?" And I was picturing like going back to my boss with my hat in my hand because he did say I could come back in 6 months if I needed the job. And then it happened. Like I had this ding in my inbox, Gumroad sale, and I just remember staring at it in disbelief, and then running up and down my flat, screaming and fist pumping at the top of my lungs. And I remember it was raining outside, and I was like, I don't give a shit. And I was outside, like everyone was miserable, and I was grinning like a maniac. And from there, everything just started to take off. And you mentioned that it's like it seems like you have this like really big burst of result, and it's almost like an overnight win. But there was just so much stuff underneath, like a tip of the iceberg, like so much effort and learning of skills and just iterating and failing, and then it just things that I started trying started working, and that was yeah, really really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be an encouraging moment. I remember after I'd been writing a newsletter for a while, about a year ago, when someone first paid me for the web design course I made, it was kind of mind blowing. It was like I knew it was real, but I sort of didn't know it was real.
Mm,
Other people were doing it, and but it somehow was outside my beliefs that someone could just send me money for something I made and put online. And it's it's a big moment when people can make their first, even if it's $1, right? It's like, oh, okay, it
yeah,
suddenly I can do this. It's not just something that other people do.
yeah, for sure. I think it's important what you said. It's like even if it's $1, uh, there's like a lot of entrepreneurs say like charge what you're worth online, but it's really hard when you think you're worth nothing. And so I like it's not about the money at the start; it's about momentum. And like you said, the main blocker is belief. There are thousands of people out there that will pay you for a problem that you've already solved, and you just need one person to like do that vote of confidence in you, and it can really build from there. It's such a shame that a few people actually take that like last final, well, I said last final step, but it's the first real step, but it is also the last step from being in like commodity creator hell. Like I remember my first high ticket was $500 for 10 hours of calls, unlimited writing critiques, and like 3 months of WhatsApp support. I think my hourly rate was like $1 an hour. So I could have made more money in McDonald's, but I didn't care because all I wanted to do was make it the best $500 this guy had spent. And to this day, he agrees. Like he's also in South America at the moment with a smoking hot Colombian wife, and he quit his job and he's built a business and all of this. And I managed to use his case study to like really kickstart my business. And so I always just tell people if you're struggling at the start, aim smaller. That was my mistake. I was like picturing the top of the mountain, and it's like you've just got to do that first step, and the path reveals itself in more than the walk. So yeah, starting small might not be sexy, but it works.
This is a creator service announcement. See, this June in Vancouver, Canada, we're running a 3-day experience called the Future Proof Creator Summit. Kieran Drew is one of the headline speakers, along with Dan Coe, Taylin Simmons, Kimi Anora, Olivia Piers, Hussein Ibarra, Jack Moses, Brian Meyerhofer, Dan Goldfield. It's quite a lineup of speakers. There's 15 keynote speakers delivering some incredible wisdom and education. And we'll be running networking games to get you linked up with like minds, people like you who are trying to figure it out. How do I produce compelling writing? How do I produce a brand that attracts people to my message? How do I produce an offer that's truly valuable and transformative for people? And how do I sell it? How do I actually get paid to build a business worth running? So if you can join us in Vancouver or online, go to thelivinginternet.com and secure your seat. Can't wait to hang out for this whole 3-day immersive, transformative experience. Yeah, I feel like it's really key what you pointed out about how you just found a problem that you had solved for yourself. And instead of then trying to create some new solution and sell it, you just found that, oh, other people already are looking for a solution that I've already found. I think people would underestimate how many problems they have solved in their own lives that someone else would pay for. So it's an interesting thing to investigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting though that your your job isn't to find a new problem, but it is to shine a new perspective on it. And so, for example, as you said about it's I didn't find a new solution, so I actually you do have to design like a new pathway for someone or something different at least, not better but different is the key thing. And so, in copywriting we call it like this, but like a unique mechanism. And that's the bit where people trip up. They're like, oh, why on earth would someone pay me? Or like, I need to find this special problem to solve. And it's like, I can't remember the quote, if it's Derek Sivers or Naval, where it's like, if everyone actually listened, everyone would have like $1 billion in six-pack abs. Yeah, it's, you get to build something for other people that was really useful for you. And for example, mine was solving writer's block. And a swipe file is nothing new at all. like, but instead of just it being a swipe file, I called it the looking glass technique. And I had explained how you would look at someone's work and you would consider what the structure and the big idea was, and then combine that with your unique angles and your unique beliefs. And then I would show how that would work and give real examples and like support all of that. And a lot of people, that product alone now has made, I think, multi six figures, and it's just a swipe file. I still use it today myself, and that's the key point. Is that like when you build stuff for yourself and that you actually use, like you will sell it because it's useful for you. So yeah, just a new spin on an old problem is your job online.
Yeah, that's very insightful. So writing, how did you overcome writer's block?
Yeah. How How did I overcome writer's block? Wow, I think that the main advice is to sit and write every day. Like people think that you write because you have ideas, but you have ideas because you write. And I think getting out of your own way is super important there, and just accepting that what you are about to write is absolutely terrible. Um, like if you to get like super tactical with the actual writer's block, like if you just to sit down and there's nothing coming out, one of my favorite tactics for that is to write about why there's nothing coming out. And or the other one is you just start writing about crap like from the day before, and eventually Julian Spiro has this idea, it's like a creativity forcer. You've got to run the crappy water out and stuff starts kind of clearing up a bit. That's like in terms of the actual, like when you're sitting there with writer's block. But I think the main issue with writer's block is that most people think the work happens at the computer, when actually what you type is the final step of the writing process. um, and this is why I love writing, long before the results roll in. Like no skill would challenge you more to become more sensitive to the world around you, to material, to ideas, and it is everywhere. And so I think that most writer's block is either a lack of inspiration, and so you really want to expose yourself to good thinkers, good books, good TV, good museum, whatever. It doesn't actually matter. You just need to be around inspiration. And then there is an issue of habits. So, I spend so much of my time just walking. And if I don't have ideas, I can look back at my week and be like, oh, well, you're not really walking or talking. Conversations is a huge one. Like, if you have a conversation with an interesting person for 2 hours, and then you're gonna have ideas. Like it's like idea ping pong. I think that the third part of writer's block, which I was definitely a victim of, is pressure. I was so attached to the result of my writing that I couldn't write. I have a problem with perfectionism, and so I was really getting in my own way there. And a little bit of pressure is a good thing, but for creativity, you really have to drop the expectation of a result. And so one of my principles for life now, because I really struggled with that as someone that needed a lot of external validation as a kid, I always tell myself the purpose is play. And if I sit down to write a newsletter to perform, and by perform what I mean is, hey, look how smart I am, or buy my stuff, it never ever goes that well. But if I sit down and say the purpose is to play, it's brilliant. And I don't mean play as in to not take something seriously, but like people know play is so childish, but it's like, what is play is just doing the thing without expecting it to like give you something like a clap on the back and all of this. And so I do a lot of writing coaching now, and the first, like when I first started writing coaching, I was like, we need to do all these exercises. We need to find your perfect belief system. We need to like build your social profile. Now I ask them for the first month just to write to me and have fun. And by the end of that month, all the ideas are there. They're loving the writing process. I'm loving reading it and watching them get better. And so, yeah, it's get out your own way. Like, yeah, it's a beautiful skill. Just have fun with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it suck sometimes. Let it be whatever it is.
For sure.
Yeah, your writing, sometimes I would describe it as kind of ballsy. Like you're just saying what you're saying in ways that maybe some people would feel like, oh, I don't know, is that kind of um I don't know. Is it too informal or something, right? But you tell your story and it's punchy and it's entertaining. So you've kind of found your style. Um I was listening to you talk a little bit about storytelling,
Mm,
and you said something around how a lot of people get too hung up on certain tactical frameworks. They think they got to have the perfect hook
mm,
and so on. But there is some truth in it, right? You have to hook people's attention. But what is it that's actually going to do that? How do you tell a compelling story?
mm. Uh, Well, I guess you just kind of went by both routes there. So you have the tactical ability to write a hook, which you're talking curiosity gaps. And so what I mean by that is one of the main mistakes people make with storytelling is that they clear their throat. And then literally clear my throat at the same time. But they set the scene by like, oh, I was doing this that day and I felt like this and blah 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 blah. But actually, what you want to do is not clear your throat, but grab your reader by the throat, and that means being immediately in the action. So, for example, I had just told a story last week that was by far my most popular email that I've ever sent. And the first lines are, "Dude, are you on a motorbike?" And then I watched as the robber drove away with my phone. And
Yes.
once you've done that, you get to then go pull back and give context. And actually, that's the art of it. Because if you then just start going further and further into the story, it's too much. Like you want to, it's almost like it's like a dance, right? Like it's a call and reaction. And so you give a bit, then you pull back, and you kind of keep doing that. So that's what we're talking about. The start of the hook is the beginning the action, and just the peak emotional event. By the way, like one of my favorite tricks or hacks for writing, for storytelling and writing in general, is that it is super hard to write a good hook. And so if you just get going and then delete the first few paragraphs, the hook is there. So that story first started with like, I just finished my dinner and Dakota Robertson had called, and Dakota's never called me before, so I was really confused as to why I should answer it. And then I answered it, and blah 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 blah. And then it was like, dude, are you on a motorbike? I was like, oh, there's the hook. So it's a really nice way to like, again, if you put pressure on a hook, it will not come out. And so you've just got to trick the monkey mind to like, it's in there somewhere. But the one of my main gripes with storytelling online is that when I look around at 99% of people who teach storytelling, I've never seen them tell a good story. Uh, like they've got like the perfect list of frameworks, and yet when I like I'll consume all their content, I'm like, well, where the hell is the story? And like a story is not like, oh, hey, I created content on LinkedIn and nobody read, and then a year later people are reading, and here's my storytelling tactics. It's like that is not a story. Like that's and so especially these days, the key to being a good storyteller is to living an interesting life. And the key to living an interesting life, in my opinion, is to follow your fear, because I think that fear is a signal for where most people will not go. And you mentioned a bit earlier that you think I'm a courageous writer or bold in my writing. Dude, 5 years ago, I used to apologize for standing in a queue. Like, I couldn't be more British. And I was super scared of what people would think. But I had begun to like work on my relationship with fear. And these days, I my favorite part about writing is there's almost a forcing function to live on the edge of your life, because that's where all the good stuff happens. And I don't just mean good stuff for like, oh, hey, I'm gonna get like, I'm not holding my phone out hoping people will rob me in South America. But it helps being a fucking idiot sometimes. Um, but I mean that like following your fear and your actions is really how you end up becoming the best version of yourself, because it's where you feel alive. And that is where you then get to create content that people really enjoy. And so I have managed, I'm so grateful to say it, but like I would consider from my brand strengths is that I'm a good storyteller. But the only reason is because I've just been trying to solve so much of my own shit. And I bring that fear into my writing too. And so if there's something I'm scared to write, I will write about it, because I know that most people won't. And I know it's the thing my reader needs to hear the most too, because we've all got the same like underlying demons. And um, one example, I sent an email explaining my 7 months of somatic therapy experience, and I'd never heard of somatic therapy until this year. And the first time this lady asked me, "How does that feel in your body?" I thought she was speaking Chinese, because I've had so much like spinal surgery and a broken neck that I'd completely disconnected from my body. And anyway, I ended up telling this story about that and how I'd come to realize that so much of my judgments were wrong, and how I'd screwed up relationships because of this and all that. And some dude replied, and he was like, "This is disgusting. Like, you've been portraying this like perfect personal brand, and like to be talking like this, you really you shouldn't be in like this position of power or whatever. And I was like, this is absolutely crazy because I know most of the personal brands that most people know, and most of them are a wreck, but they don't talk about it. And so I think the key to being a great storyteller is to be real. And being real doesn't mean presenting the perfectly polished side of yourself with the rough edges, the demons you don't want to explore, and the stuff that you're like, oh my God, will someone judge me for this? That's the stuff that I like to write about.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there. You've written a lot about a variety of struggles and adventures. So we could get a little bit into some of what you've. Well, I don't want to jump too far back. Let's maybe jump into the story that you alluded to, because we also mentioned it at the beginning of this episode. We were going to record a few weeks back, and that was right when that event took place, when
Mhm.
your friend is on the phone asking you, "Are you on a motorbike?" and someone came by and swiped your phone from your hand. And
Yeah.
I just read that letter, so a great story came out of it. But at that moment, when you emailed me and said, "Hey, sorry, we have to delay," you were in the thick of it,
Mm.
in a
Mm.
country where your first language isn't commonly spoken. Suddenly, you lose access to all of your accounts and
Yeah.
devices.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it was a hell of a time. I'm smiling now. It was. I think it was probably the worst 2 3 days of my life. Maybe there's one more event that might top that, but I just cannot describe how many things went wrong from something so simple as getting your phone stolen. Like as I watched this lovely man disappear with my iPhone, I was like, okay, shit, you've been robbed. It's not the first time, unfortunately. Go home and lock your phone. Change your bank card, no problem. So I got home, I text my VA on WhatsApp on my laptop, and I locked my phone, and I was like, cool. The girl that I was seeing came over, she gave me a spare phone, went to bed. I was like, oh, that was pretty scary. In the morning, I got to make some calls, and then when I woke up, my Mac wasn't working, and I was like, huh. Um, Maybe Apple were like helping me out here. Could I change my passwords? So I go down onto my phone and I changed my password, which is crazy bit, and I can't get into my Gmail. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty weird. Maybe I forgot the passwords because Einstein over here, I didn't write down the new passwords. And so I'm like trying to like hack myself now, and then the phone switches off, and I'm like, oh fuck, this is pretty serious. Like all the technology that I have is now gone. Um, so I asked the guy I was seeing, I was like, you need to go back to your apartment and get me a laptop. Like I need internet like now. And so she goes, and there's like an hour of me just waiting, being like, well, what is going on here? I just staring at the ceiling, like trying to calm down. But the more I was thinking about it, the more I was like, oh, if they have access to Apple and they have access to email, what else do they have access to? And Carolina, the girl I'm seeing, she arrives and like God bless, she's Spanish and she shouldn't speak English, and so like it's quite fun and cute on dates. And but when your world is burning down and you're like trying to get answers and stuff, yeah, it's pretty tense. Anyway, I go on a laptop and I managed to get into my business email, and I'm like, okay, cool, result. And I have an email from a friend being like, hey, why did you just send me £10? And I was like, huh? They're in my bank. And then kicked out of Gmail again. And I was just like, oh my God, they're in like everything here. So I was like, okay, give me your phone. I need to start making some calls. And I try to call Apple, can't get through. I try to call my British banks, I can't get through. And I'm like, why can't I call international? And there's something about Argentina that you can't do that either. And like, I'm just everything that I was thinking of was getting worse and worse. I go to a phone shop. I have like 3 SIM cards I tried to buy, they don't work. And all this time, I'm like, these people are in my accounts. And as I'm thinking about it, I just remembered the government had sent me a 5-figure tax refund in the account that they're in, and I was like, wow, the stakes are getting really, really high, like really fast here, and I can't do anything. And so there's probably like 16 hours of me in chatbots. Like I've never hated AI so much. Like, have you ever tried to find Apple Chat with a person? It took me like 4 or 5 hours. Can't speak to my bank, so you need the app. And when I tried to log into the bank, they text my phone, which they have. So that told them which banks I had, and I was like, I can't even like try to speak to things because they'll speak to my phone. Anyway, by the end of that day, I was completely fucked. Like my nervous system was fried. I can't think at all, and I like Carolina's like, you've got to go to bed. Like, there's nothing you could do. I woke up in the morning, remembering that I had an iPad in England, like an old iPad, and I was like, oh my god. Phone to my mum. She charges it. I'm like, please be in my Gmail. It was. So I got into my Gmail. I used that Gmail to recover my other Gmail. I changed everything immediately, phone numbers, everything. And I was like, boom, I'm back, nothing to worry about. And then I started reading the emails. And I was like, oh my God, there was just like crypto accounts. All my banks were emailing me transactions, warning signs from Wise, Coinbase, all of this stuff. And I was like, and there was emails like cards verified. And I was like, oh, 'cause this whole time ChatGPT is like, it's cool. Don't worry about it. They can't do anything. And fucking AI, man, I hate it. And I realized they could do everything. I got into my business account, it's empty, which, I was like, okay, I could see the transactions. The card was rejected straight away. And then they verified the card because to verify a card, you need Gmail and phone number. And so then they just drained the account. That wasn't where the tax refund was. That was in my other account. And but I couldn't speak to them on the phone. That was only a phone thing. And eventually, what we did was I called my mum on Google Meets with Carolina's laptop. She holds the phone to the mic, and I shout down the laptop. But they both got laptops that are made by potatoes. So the mic is so bad, and I'm talking to someone in India who can't hear me for like 4 or 5 hours, like screaming at each other. Eventually, I get through to fraud, and he reads out every transaction. And it's like 29 transactions of like, did you send $1,000 to Jose? And did you do this? And like my heart is just getting ripped out every single time. And then halfway through, he's like, and you've been sending money to your global access account. Is that you? And I was like, what global access account? And they're like, sir, you don't have a second bank account with us? And I was like, no. And he was like, oh, we need to forward you onto the fraud team now. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Um, so yeah, and like the long story short of that, man, is just banks robbed, uh, phone's gone, and because they wiped my Mac, Einstein over here spent 600 hours on a book he forgot to save it on the cloud, and so I lost the book too. Um,
Oh,
yeah, which was. I'm so glad I didn't realize that until towards the end because I had no emotion left in me. Uh, by then, um, I was just like, this is just absolutely crazy. But there is some good, like they didn't manage to get into my life savings. Crypto asked for a photo of the passport, which I think every bank should. So a lot of like good stuff there. But yeah, the book is gone. And as I said in the email, uh, it was actually pretty dark. Like as in my head, like I was like, this is you've never felt so helpless because it's digital, but it feels physical, like an assault of your like inner core. And I was just staring out at the balcony, and I was getting these weird thoughts where I was like, if you jumped right now, this would be so much easier. I used to have thoughts like that a lot when I was younger, and yeah, the stoic thought of this too shall pass will kick in, and it managed like it didn't solve the problem, but it took it down from like a 9.9 to an 8.5, which is a lot when you want to think a bit clearer. And I began to realize like I had to genuinely sit there and think about have I lost all my life savings, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. What would you do differently if you had lost that? Would you still go after your dream of writing? And I was like, I had to sit there for a few hours. I was like, actually, yeah, I think I would still go for it. Um, I had to realize I was like, it doesn't matter if I thought I might have lost my Twitter audience and all of this, and I was like, you just nothing would change. You would just keep writing after, and so it was actually quite nice to have to entertain such a fear setting, right? I was like, you really have to face the worst consequences here. And thankfully none of that happened except the book. So right now I'm running on a good high.
Yeah, I'm glad you can extract that mentality from it. It's sort of like what the Stoics taught about intentionally going without something. Like if you have wealth, like walk away from it for a while and see what that's like
Yeah,
because it could be taken away. So it's
yeah,
powerful to find that inner resource to know like what you would do and that you would be okay and that you would keep going.
yeah, yeah. Um, Everyone's a philosopher until you get punched in the face. And I think I just want to like a bit of context is that obviously I sound super positive, but there was a good 8, 9 days where I was just wallowing in my own misery, super feeling sorry for myself. Argued with a friend because he wouldn't drive to a different city in England to pick up my new SIM card. Just like super low energy, and every time I thought about writing a book again, I was like, "Why me? This isn't fair." It's 800 hours of work. Yeah, I think I was pretty depressed, and then ironically I was like, I can't do this anymore. So let's do the only thing that I know well, and let's start writing. And I whipped out a journal because I haven't got a laptop. And you know what, man? As soon as the words started pouring out of me, the weight in my mind began to lift. And there's something beautiful about writing about problems. They don't get rid of the problems, but the problems feel lighter. You just have a different perspective when it's not tainted by the chaos of your mind. And I actually realized I was like, okay, you're very upset about the book because you were so close to releasing a book and you were attached to the result of what a book would unlock. The respect, the money, something to sell, all of this. But actually, the book was special to me because of how I felt in the process. I've never felt more alive writing it. I've never got so good at writing so quickly. I've never felt so creatively challenged, and none of that has changed. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, you get to write this book again, but better. I think many artists would secretly dream of a blank canvas, and you now have it. And so I asked myself, like, okay, you have to do this again. It's probably another 1,000 hours. You can't afford to make this something like a book that's then the opening access to the next book. I was like, you've got to love this thing from day one. And so I was like, well, what would you do if you weren't so scared? And so the new version of the book is much different to the old one already. And so I'm a firm believer that the worst times in my life have led to the best. And I don't think this will be anything different.
Amazing. Yeah, it's incredible how writing holds that power um, to process all the stuff that goes on inside of us and give us perspective and
Mm,
even analyze our own thinking patterns that are invisible otherwise,
mm,
right?
mm.
It's a beautiful thing. So what's your actual writing practice like these days? Like when you're working on a book, how do you structure your day? How do you structure your work?
Sure. Well, right now I'm actually, it's probably not super relatable for someone, but there'll be good lessons for it. But I'm writing about 5,000 to 6,000 words a day because that was one strength that I have managed to build over the past 5 years. I love writing so much that I was like, actually, what would happen if you said write a book in a month? I heard Nat Lyson say this, and I was like, I think I could probably do that. So that in itself, I'm a firm fan of structure for writing, as in routine. And so I'll kind of just say the way that I would do it normally and what's changed a bit. But I always start my day with writing. So I'm a firm believer you should be unreachable for the first half of your day. You should spend it with your mind, and that's what writing is. Writing is thinking. And so I would always have two deep work blocks of 90 minutes. I don't like Pomodoro technique, which is 25-5, because it takes 25 minutes for me to get into the flow anyway. Um, Within those 90 minutes, I would drink as much English tea as I could possibly have. And in between the 90, I mean, when I said like you're going to be doing 5,000 words, I'm treating writing extremely seriously, and so I'll backtrack a little bit. You only have like well, 4 to 6 hours of creative quality in you normally, um, and so I was like, well, how do we optimize that? It's what happens outside of it. And so I used to be a big fan of waking up and working. I don't think that's actually that great because your mind takes time to get going. And so I spend the first 40 minutes doing body awareness stuff, because I feel like the more connected you are with your body, the better you are, you write. And then my body is like a war zone. So I do a lot of like stretching and exercises. Then I journal for 10 minutes. Then I begin writing. 90 minutes, I go. With that, I kind of know what I'm writing about. Like I like to have structures and outlines, but I also will give myself the freedom to explore if it takes it that direction. I think the main mistake people make when they want to focus is that they take deep work seriously and don't take deep rest seriously. And so I used to finish work and I would go on social media, which is like, you know, like giving your mind heroin after crack cocaine. It's not how it gets off of it, right? Like, actually, what you need to fall in love with is doing nothing. And so I go for a 20-minute walk. In Buenos Aires, it's beautiful here. Just don't walk with your phone out, is my advice. I get a coffee, I come back, I do another 90 minutes. Then I'll do the same. I go to the gym. But what I used to do was I would then answer all my emails and my DMs and all of this. And like you kind of know, I'm terrible at replying to people now. Sorry. But it's because all I want to do when I'm not writing is rest my mind. And so the gym is perfect for that because you have an hour of how much the best way to rest your mind is to be in your body. And so I'll work out. Ironically, the working out has never been so good because I'm actually focused on, like, I won't listen to podcasts, very rarely listen to music. I'll come back and I'll write for another 60 to 90 minutes. That is my routine regardless. And you can get more done with 2 hours of work like this than most people get done with 8 hours of fucking around. Then I kind of split my day into four chunks. So you have the creativity stuff, which we just discussed. Then you have commerce, which is the making of the money. So for me, that's a bit client work. And so I tell my clients, I have just 5 clients. I say, look, I'm more than happy to critique your work, answer all your questions. I'm just not available before like 2, 3 p.m. The time changes because I've never woken up to an alarm in like 3 years now because I don't like anything telling me what to do, which is why I'm an entrepreneur. And then after I've done the commerce work, there's time for clarity, a lot of that. So reading, a lot of reading, a lot of talking to friends, which I find to be really good for my mind, really good for ideas, and a lot of learning. So that's kind of the routine, and I just rinse and repeat that. It's a day that you can do for eternity. So the main difference, by the way, of just like writing a couple thousand words a day and 5,000 is just your willingness to focus. Like I would tell myself I was doing a 90-minute work block, but I would go on Twitter a little bit, or I'd book a restaurant or something. And now I'm like, oh no, you will do 5 hours, which is usually about 5,000 words, and then you get to live, you get to do other stuff. So
Yeah, it's not always an easy thing to stay dedicated to writing. So I feel like you really have to put some rules in place, rules and constraints. What about when it comes to writing in a way where you're also looking to offer something to sell to people? People experience a lot of resistance in that, feeling like, oh, I can't ask people to buy something from me or ask for money. And you don't want to pitch in a way that, feels salesy or feels like, oh, I'm only writing this to sell you something. But you want to offer what you have to offer, and you want your writing to be enjoyable. So how do you weave that in?
I think there's two things. There's the first one is probably the work that most people don't want to do, but your attitude around sales and selling is more of a reflection of your beliefs around money. I say that because I come from a belief that money is evil, and therefore I would demonize every way that I'd made money and that it was bad to sell and that I shouldn't sell. And yet, deep down, I also wanted money, and it's a horribly weird tension. And I think people need to do. You get that because if you come from a scarcity mindset background, I noticed that when I went home, I was chatting with family, and they'd be like, "Oh, this person bought a Range Rover. Look at them to show off." And I was like, "Wow, this explains a lot, actually." And so I think doing that sort of work about your relationship with money is super important. Then I so I would like to think that I sell quite well, as in it's not too pushy. But I have veered onto the side of pushing. I think it's super important that people realize you don't have to market like 95% of the internet. So many people are so desperate for sales when actually the way that you pitch your business is an invitation to invest. And my rule of thumb is number one is that I will not market to my audience the way I don't like to be marketed to myself. Or I would like to be marketed to me how I would like it. I just pause that up for you know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
basically, don't do shit you wouldn't like to see yourself. And so that's a huge filter. Like I look at my competition and they will say something like, this product is never going to be available again until it's available in a different asset 4 months later. This timer, once this goes, there will never be a discount. And it's like, maybe about a month's time, there'll be a different discount. Or just straight up lying about stuff, which is just absolutely crazy. And I much prefer you. The only way you can play this game in the long term is if you feel good in what you're doing. And so you sell the way you want to sell. Um, but that, of course, some people take that too far. Like, oh, I'm never gonna lean into like proper persuasion tactics, and they always think persuasion has a dirty connotation to it. But I just like to remind people that um, if you build something you believe in, it is your duty to sell it to other people because when people pay, they pay attention. And so, A, build something you believe in. Like, if you're selling shit that you don't believe in, like that eventually you're running on dirty fuel. And then B, yeah, learn the basics of persuasion. Uh, and you will find that you get into a nice flow. So, for example, I like one of my basic rules is that before I sell, I teach. And before I teach, I tell a story. Every single email. Story, lesson, invitation to invest. And then I thought from there, it's like, well, look, the 1% of my audience that wants to buy will, the other percent of my audience that wants to learn gets to, and the people that are just reading to get entertained get that too. And so that's how I've been feeling great about my marketing, and people just need to find their own flow with it.
Yeah. Wow. Really appreciate that perspective. That's super helpful. What do you think is a common taught, like quote unquote, best practice in the creator economy that you think is actually a waste of time for most people?
Oh, that's good. Two things jump to mind, which I'm sure we'll break into. One is writing with AI, and two, which I think would be the one to discuss first, is data-driven growth. Um, I the problem. So what is data-driven growth? Someone will tell you start creating content on social media. Wait until you've gathered enough data, follow the data, and then you'll win. Okay. Um, there is a dark side to data-driven growth, and I've followed it, and it fucking sucks. Because I mean, Seth Godin said like if you follow the data long enough, you end up selling porn. And ironically, the people that teach you to follow the data, okay, all they're doing is building a marketing business by selling marketing, and that's where you end up when you follow data. You end up appeasing the crowd. You end up going down the easy path, and the problem with that is that A, you never find out what makes you unique, and B, the easy path leads to the hardest place where everyone else is. And so I am very hesitant when people are like they sing the glory of data driven growth, when actually, especially these days, as more and more people move online, as AI is much better at following data than you'll ever be, um, what makes you unique is what will actually lead to your business growth. And so um, I just say to people, it's like, yes, follow the data, but the most important data point is internal, it's your intuition. How did this feel when I wrote it? Is a much clearer signal for who is liking it and who is not. Because if you even run if you run an idea, let's say, Jesse, you have a great idea and you're so excited to write it, you post it on Twitter and no one likes it, and then you go, oh, well, that was shit. That was a bad idea. Let's never do it again. But like an idea takes time it's like a seed, right? You need to write about it 30 times. You need to improve your hooks. You need to find the right stories. And actually, the people who would love those ideas, the people that would really respond to the authentic you, never get to find you because you were following the data, the external data. And so I think it takes courage to actually not follow the data, um, and to follow your intuition instead.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I think that'll be very helpful to a lot of people. Uh, working through the tough part of finding your own voice and finding out what you actually want to say.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, I
yeah,
would say, sorry, I think it's the most important work. And I think come back to the purpose of play for one. Like, there is no perfect niche. That's one thing that I really screwed up at the start. I thought if I could just find the thing that made me special, everything would click into place. It doesn't exist because your niche isn't a one-time decision; it's an evolution. And the way you evolve is in response to feedback, and the way you get feedback is by being out in the environment. And so the best framing that I can give to anyone who really wants to write something special and build a business they love is to treat everything as an experiment. There is no failing or losing. There is just data of what works and what doesn't. As I said, internal data as well as the external data. Um, and when you're doing an experiment, you just set yourself a target. So, for example, the first time I did this was when I quit my job. I was like, okay, 90 days, I'm going to write 30 threads. And at the start it sucked. No one liked them. But then like I think maybe 4 or 5 went viral. This was kind of after my first viral post, which we can maybe chat about if we get time. And so within that, you began to find that data. But like, if you're putting so much pressure on the result of your writing, if you're not having fun with it, like you're never really going to find it out. So everything is an experiment. I still do this now, and if this book is an experiment, everything is just seeing if I like it or not, seeing if the world does too.
so on the AI note, I think most people have grown tired of all the AI comments on X. It's probably part of the reason for the big exodus to Substack.
Yep.
It's a mess. It's a mess of just people regurgitating the same post and rewriting it with AI. And do you see many positive use cases in your work for AI?
Yeah. Like I use AI pretty much all day. I just don't use it to write. And I'm a firm believer of that from day one. So I'm quite glad that people have started kind of swinging back this way. Um, Writing is thinking, and so outsourcing it to a robot is incredibly dumb. Because what happens is, like I taught AI maybe like a year ago to write in my voice really well. I spent like 20 hours on it, and then I used it never. Because the problem is, when if you do actually manage to train AI to write in your voice, it's writing in your voice of where you are now, which but the whole point in writing is to discover, right? Is to evolve. And so you're basically taking a snapshot of when you're at your worst and then becoming limited by that. And so the whole point in AI, or the main point in AI, is productivity. And the problem is, if everybody has the most productive tool in the world, productivity is no longer special. What happens when productivity isn't special? Creativity becomes special. And how do you become more creative? It's like even AI can create beautiful things, but it's creating human things. And that only happens if you actually resist the trend of using it in the first place. So it's a really interesting feedback loop. I use AI as an assistant, as a thinking partner. And so, for example, let's say I have a coaching call. So I just started a high ticket business, and high ticket's low leverage. It's very time for money, and people find that quite frustrating. We have so much AI running in our coaching business, so that I get to do my work. So we're using software to book the calls, start the calls, record the calls. When the recording is done, we use AI to take the transcript, create notes, edit those notes, and send it out to the client of what the monthly objectives are. That's uploaded into Notion as a checklist for them too, so that I can check that with them. We also upload the transcript to extract every proof point, every problem, every compliment, and so we have this body of work building up based on every conversation that we have, and we have AI running at every single point of the business. So thinking of ideas. Let's say, for example, I write a newsletter. Uh, it will create a social media plug for my newsletter that my AI can run, and so I have like an absolute repulsion for friction, and so I use AI for that. But the whole point is to buy back time for writing. Because if you can combine like a human driven writing with AI capabilities, like you're gonna have a fucking fantastic time. Which is that most people get so dumb about AI that they forget that the human bit is the bit that people care about.
Yeah. I appreciate that perspective. Absolutely. So on that topic of like allowing your work to continue evolving, because an LLM is only going to reference your past work, right? So you said to be an interesting writer, you've got to live an interesting life.
Mm.
And there's a couple of things I was wanting to ask you because in your recent months, I've seen you talk a little bit about your traveling and some other experimentation. You've tried new things. You mentioned trying some breath work. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you even mentioned, and this is of great interest to me. I've had other guests on who are like experts on the topic of psychedelics.
Mm.
I believe you had a mushroom experience. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah,
I would love to hear about it if you would like to share on it.
yeah, sure, sure. So this was at the start of the year. I had just started my first kind of nomading thing, and I'd been to Thailand, and then I got to South Africa. And yeah, to some context, like a few months, I've been very interested in self-awareness. I'm doing a lot of unhelpful scripts, trauma from when I was younger, this sort of stuff. And I arrived in South Africa. I was at the gym one day. This guy came up to me and was like, "Dude, you have the craziest scar on your neck." And, for reference, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was younger, and when I was about 16, and obviously that was quite a tough time. And I explained it to this guy, and he was like, "Oh, no way! I had stage 4 brain cancer." And I was like, "Oh, no, you had real problems. Like that's crazy." Yeah, mine was obviously pretty severe, but not that. And anyway, he was like, "Dude, I'm a shamanic singer at a mushroom event." And I was like, "Okay, didn't expect that." He's like, "You should come." And my rule when I was traveling the first time was to say yes to everything because I was like, let's just see what weird shit you get into. And you can probably imagine when I got to Bangkok, that got pretty weird. So when I got here, I was like, okay. I was like, look, man, I've partied with mushrooms before. I've taken a bit, it's quite fun. How do you decide how many mushrooms you do? And he looked at me and he was like, don't worry about that. The spirit guide will tell you. And I was I was like, right, am I gonna do this? I was like, okay, cool. I bought the ticket a week later, and I turned up at this house. It's beautiful, beautiful place, like super spiritual. Pool outside, beds laid out. The guy that had got me to go there got robbed that day. It's a recurring theme in my life apparently. And as I was sort of sitting there, I was like, oh, this is how you get your organs harvested, isn't it? You turn up to a random stranger's house and do a load of psychedelics. And I was like, oh, fuck it, we're here now. I went to the kitchen and she just did the spirit guide of the pendulum. And so she says, when the pendulum is swinging, we will put more and more mushrooms into the drink. And when the pendulum, or like weighing out the mushrooms, and when the pendulum changes direction, that's what the spirit guide is telling you. And so she was like, okay, will Kieran do zero point 0.5 grams? Will Kieran do 1 gram? Will Kieran do 1.5? She's climbing up and up and up. It gets to like 3 grams, and I'm like, okay, this is getting pretty intense. This is way more than I've done before. And it got to 5 grams, and then the pendulum started moving, and she was like, is that okay? And I'm looking at her, and I was like, I have literally just read that 5 grams is ego death, a heroic dose, they call it. And I was like, yeah, sure. Right, why not? And for reference, you're meant to fast when you do mushrooms, and people turned up 3 hours late, so I haven't eaten for like 18 hours now. And I had these mushrooms. I go lie down, and after about 10 minutes, I start feeling it, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. I enjoy this sort of feeling. And then I was like, wait a second, I'm feeling as fucked up on mushrooms that I've ever been, and it's been 10 minutes, and normally it takes me an hour to feel anything. And I began to panic. I
Oh
was
boy.
like, yeah, I was like, oh shit, like this is gonna be absolutely crazy. And I opened my eyes, and the floor was just rocking like a ship, and the ceiling, and the more scared I got, the visuals went from nice to like black lightning flashing before my eyes, and it was really intense. And the small sober part that was left in my head was like, this is just a drug. you need to breathe and you need to let go. And which is ironically the lesson of psychedelics, right? It's like you need to let go into you need to let go and enjoy reality. And I began doing that, and it just hit me like an absolute truck, but in a good way. I was out. I'm pretty sure I passed out. I don't know. Like it was like 2 hours, where I don't really remember what was happening. But it was like my brain was in a blender with a time machine. Like everything made no sense and perfect sense at all. And there was just scenes of like my life from 20 years ago as if they happened yesterday, and stuff that happened yesterday that felt like 20 years ago. And it was super, super weird. And as my brain began to come back from like that peak, everything slowed down a bit and I began watching scenes of my life. And it was super, super interesting because I was watching seemingly insignificant interactions and being like, wow, I can't believe you responded like that, or you said that thing, or like it's super interesting how you really cared what that person thought. And I was loving it. I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. This like awareness times 1,000. And then it got to the scene of when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I felt this huge uncomfortable feeling in my stomach, like this pit of anxiety. And I remember lying there being like, "Fucking, where's the fast forward button? I don't want to watch this shit." And it got slower and slower and more real. And it was the weirdest thing. I was watching the scene of me with my mum, but I could feel like her hand in my hand. And I could see the doctor putting the x-rays out in front of us and then being like, this is going to be really scary what we tell you, but you have a brain tumor. And what I realized was I had never thought about this thing. Um, I'm a very stoic person. I found stoicism as a result of this thing. There's a fine line between reframing and repression, and I was about to find out. And I had to go through on the mushrooms and watch the drive home when my mum was quietly sobbing, and I'm just sitting in the back of the car stunned, and my dad is silent. The conversation about do you want to have an operation after they just told you you might die during it, and me being like, no way. The 2 years that I put the operation off as I went to a military boarding school where no one understood what happened. I didn't understand what had happened, and I never felt so alone. Like the nights I would spend crying myself to sleep because I was like, felt so unseen. Like I was like, everyone's acting normal around me, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And it was really rough watching it. Like I was grieving, and I was like, this sucks. Like this, someone told me mushrooms were meant to be fun, and I was like, I like crying here. And what then happened was that I started feeling this wave of well, what I now know as love, like love for myself. Because since that, I used to look back at that period of my life and think, man, you're such a pussy. Like you can actually see it in my writing. So my first viral thread was about this experience, and the second post, I go, I was an absolute loser. Like I was a fat kid at school that was anxious and all of that, and I was like, wow, man, like you were a 16-year-old kid that got told you could potentially die from a brain tumor. Like that's rough. And I began feeling this like empathy for the person I was, and I'd never felt that before. And I was like, wow. And then what happened was, and it was so beautiful, I got to watch the second half of the movie. So the day that I'm rolling into the surgery and like my mom is crying and I make a joke. I can't remember what the joke was, but like it was terrible and she bursts out laughing and I'm like, good for you, man. And then I come out of the surgery and like I can't walk, I can't even shit like without help. And yet every day I would try to stand up by myself and work on this. And then, 6 months later I get back to the gym and I manage to become a dentist and I get to graduate and I'm watching all this stuff on mushrooms and I'm like, holy shit, man, like good for you, like you pulled that back, like and I was just stunned. I came out, like I managed to sit up, everyone else around me is still KO'd, and I'm just lying there with the stupidest grin on my face, and I'm like, dude, man, like you just I like watching the moment I quit dentistry and made my first dollar online and all this. And it was the first time that I had realized that all of the achievements I had, I was running away from something, not running towards. I was running away from this person I used to be, this scared little child. But actually, like what a beautiful thing, like to experience such fear. And like I would much rather love myself and build than like hate myself and build. And at that point, I began to write. So I pulled out my journal and I began to write, and it's super interesting. Like I look at it now, and like the letters are back to front. I don't even know how you could do that. Like I was drawing with words, all of this stuff, but I ended up writing 7 principles that came out of it. And those principles have been shaping my decisions since. That a lot of them have evolved. But you know, what is it now? Well, it's actually a year. It's a year since I did it. And in that year, I have basically gone after every single dream that I wanted. And because I managed to actually face my shit from I like I managed to realize that fear isn't fatal. And so I have a huge respect for psychedelics after that. Yeah, huge respect.
Yeah, that's incredible. Really incredible. Powerful medicine isn't always pleasant, but
For sure.
finding that love for yourself is a very powerful thing.
Mm,
Incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like all my friends are we're all quite tough guys, and I talk about them all the time about self love now, and they're like, "God, you're so soft," and yeah, everyone is so much happier as a result of it. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's an important thing. I think we spend our lives wondering what's wrong with us, and actually there is nothing wrong with you. And I think that once you accept that, you get the freedom to build on your own terms.
Yeah.
And so I just think this is why I love writing. Like if you write every day, you will eventually get to your shit, and it's gonna stink for a while, but good stuff comes out of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to end on a uplifting positive note, but I do want to ask you, and I don't always go here with people because it can be an uncomfortable thing, but you've faced this shit. So first off, I imagine when you're given that kind of news that this surgery could kill you, most people would be utterly terrified, and I would be. And yet we're all faced with mortality anyways at the end of the day.
Mm.
Um, so do you feel like you've found any greater sense of peace over mortality? Because I'll confess, it bothers me a little bit. I'd like to say, oh, I just accept reality for what it is, but it bothers me that, you know, I don't know how long my life will be. It will end.
Mm.
Have you found any peace with that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of like you here. I don't want to sit here and say, yeah, I'm not scared of death. I'm terrified of death. But the more I think about it, the less scared I am of it. And the reason being, I'm a big fan of finding what's true in life. And I think the only thing I have found that's actually true is that we're all going to die someday. And that's terrifying to people, but it's actually built into our script to not even talk about it. So when I say this to people, you can see a physical revulsion. When I'm like, dude, you could have got hit by a car today. You could have got trapped in a fire, all of this stuff. And there's a physical revulsion. Oh, you don't say that. That's terrible. And I'm like, that's not terrible. That's fucking beautiful. Because the more you think about dying, the more like it makes sense to live, you know? And so, I mean, I can tell a quick story that was like CPR to my brain for this. Is actually the reason I decided not to be a dentist. One day a patient came in. I was peak stressed, right? Like I was working all the time, running late, fucking miserable. And this patient comes in, he's hobbling in, right? And he's about 35. He's not got control of the left side of his body, and I'm like, oh, man, come on, get on the chair. Like I helped him onto the chair, and he looked at me and was like, I thought he had a stroke, and he was like, no, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and so I was like, oh shit, hi, yo, yeah, me too, high five, um, and you know, I thought we get to relate to each other a little bit here, and so I told him my little story, and then he was like, yeah, what's the name of your tumor? And super rare tumor, by the way, and I said it to him, and he was like, no way. But it was the exact same one. And so we compared scars and we were like, oh, cool. And then he looked at me and he was like, well, how are you now? And man, the guilt that hit me, I was like, here you are trying to be relatable to this guy. And like, he's fucked and you're not. And so I told him, I was like, look, I've lost sensation in my right hand. I get a lot of neck ache, but I'm completely fine. And he looked at me and was like, my life is over. I'm here because I've lost control of my right arm and I can't brush my teeth anymore. So everything's rotting on this side. My body is shutting down and I'm in constant pain. And then I'm like speechless, and he just goes, looks at his feet, looks at me again, and he's like, says 7 words that changed my life. He was like, you don't know how lucky you are. And I went to speak, and I just closed my mouth again. I was like, there is nothing you can say to this, because I was looking in the reality of what I had narrowly avoided. It only took this doctor, because they found my brain tumor by accident for a bad back. It only took a doctor to be slightly too busy or tired to not see what he saw. And I spent 6 months with this guy being like, oh, um, we operate in life like we're in the shit, we're in this pit looking up. Like if only I get up there, then I'm going to be happy. But the fact that we are alive means that we are at the top looking down, right? Like the fact that we're healthy, the fact you're listening to this, like what a fantastic thing. And underneath that is death. You know, like I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world, but so is everyone else because we're actually alive. And yeah, I think the Stoics had that right with you got to think about dying a lot because if you don't, I call it the ultimate bullshit filter. And I have been crippled by fear most of my life. And it's only when I really started thinking about dying. So after I met that guy, and I was like, dude, you're 28, and my doctor told me I'll be permanently disabled or dead by 30. And I was like, you're meant to be dead in 2 years, and you're working a job you hate. You've got all these dreams you're not doing. And since then, I've just been going for it. And I'm not suggesting that, like, oh, if you go for your dream, you'll make it. But if you go for your dream, at least you went for your dream. And you will land somewhere. And life will be fun and exciting. And you only get one shot, right? And but you can take many shots within it. People kind of get scared about that. But, like, you're going to die someday, so have fun. Yeah, it's a topic I think is really important.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being real with me about all this stuff. It's like I think the most personal stuff is often the most universal, right? So really speaks to me, the attitudes that you've discovered and insights you're sharing. I wanted to ask, and you've almost sort of touched on the answer already, but maybe we can sum it up nice for people. For people who are still maybe stuck in careers that are unsatisfying to them, or they're young and haven't really found anything yet, just working jobs or maybe in school, wanting a more fulfilling life path, knowing that entrepreneurship can be challenging and risky. People don't necessarily encourage you to go for your dreams, at least not, below the surface. On the surface, people say go for your dreams, but it's hard to go for your dreams. Um, so, and it can be risky. So what do you say to people who are just trying to wriggle their way out of a life that's not satisfying?
I think it's great to have a dream, but I kind of feel like you have the dream and then you lock it away and you come back to what's happening right now because that gap between where you are and where you want to be can feel super overwhelming. Um, the what's helping me a lot is realizing that achieving the dream is not going to give you the happiness you can only give yourself internally. So even now, when I'm writing this book, I had so many like attachments to it being the thing that was finally going to make me an author. And I was like, man, you're ignoring the fact that you're having a good time now. So try not to be too attached to that vision is important. And then in terms of like the tactical, um, get going. And when I say get going, what I mean by that is you don't know where you're going to end up. It's impossible to predict. Um, but if you don't actually get going, you'll never find out. And what you need to do is not work out like what is my dream or all of that. You just need to ask yourself one question, and that's what makes me curious. I think that if you follow your curiosity enough, you will end up where you're meant to be. For example, before writing, before stand up, I started with techno music because I was like, I'm curious by creativity. And that gave me the creativity bug. And that then led to more curious explorations. And so I think curiosity is the North Star that will lead you to where you want to go. I think that you have to have courage to follow your curiosity and ignore the crowd, because at every junction you will be told that your curiosity is a bad idea, that, and maybe not so explicitly, but like that you will always be told this is the thing that's going to make you money, or this is the thing that's going to get you status and respect. And when that comes, I think that every day you are challenged. Do you want to follow the crowd or the curiosity? And if you keep following your curiosity, um, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's when most people won't, that's going to lead you down a special path. And ironically, what happens is the more you do it, the more your day begins to become something that's beautiful in itself. And so you actually stop caring so much about achieving this big dream, which is a whole thing in itself that's terrifying, because you're not attached to it anymore. Um, but you just no one can compete with you if you're having fun. So follow your curiosity and just keep shaping your life around stuff that really lights you up. Obviously, become valuable as you go along there, like learn the basics of writing, persuasion, systems, this sort of stuff, and yeah, then patience. You know, give it like 5 years, and you'll be amazed at where you are.
Yeah. Well, this conversation was extremely insightful to me, and so I think it'll be quite helpful for a lot of people, Kieran, and really appreciate you spending this time with me. I'm also very excited to see you in Vancouver in June at the Future Proof Creator Summit. That's going to be a grand time, and so I hope that this was an enjoyable preview for people of one of the people you're going to get to hear from and learn from and hang out in the same room as. So, Kieran, thank you, and we'll stay in touch.
Yep.
We'll
Thank you, mate.
send people to the show notes for links to your Substack and everything else. So,
Great.
all
Cheers,
right.
man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Kieran. All right. Was that a blast or what? I sure had fun hearing stories and insights from Mr. Kieran Drew. I hope you did too. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Unblocked Creators, and I hope to see many of you show up in Vancouver at the Future Proof Creator Summit this June. Go to the link in the show notes, thelivinginternet.com, to secure your seat.